Welcome to the intersection of technology, cybersecurity, and society. Welcome to ITSP Magazine. You're listening to a new Redefining Security podcast. Have you ever thought that we are selling cybersecurity insincerely, buying it indiscriminately, and deploying it ineffectively? Perhaps we are. So let's look at how we can organize a successful InfoSec program that integrates people, process, technology, and culture to drive growth and protect business value. Knowledge is power, now more than ever.
Imperva is the cybersecurity leader whose mission is to protect data and all paths to it with a suite of integrated application and data security solutions. Learn more at imperva.com.
Pantera, the leader in automation security validation, allows organizations to continuously test the integrity of all cybersecurity layers by emulating real-world attacks at scale to pinpoint the exploitable vulnerabilities and prioritize remediation towards business impact. Learn more at pantera.io.
Hello, everybody. This is Sean Martin, host of Redefining Cybersecurity here on ITSP Magazine. You're very welcome to this new episode. It's going to be a series with my good friend, Michael Piacente. How are you, Michael?
Good to see you, Sean. Thanks for having me.
This is going to be fun. We've been talking off and on, since around...
A couple years.
Yeah, for quite a while, but more specifically around this... since around Black Hat time, which I'm not sure for that, but this one's from 2014. You see, I'm sporting an old school one here today.
Love it.
But we often talk about a lot of topics, and you get the pleasure of getting involved in a lot of activities at the board level and at the C-suite level, and we decided let's talk about some of that stuff. We're not going to spill the beans for anybody and expose anybody, of course, but you're seeing some cool things, and I hear some cool things, and of course there's no lack of stuff going on in the industry at large, so let's just wrap about stuff. So that's what we're going to target once a month, and we'll see how we do there. Don't be upset with us if we skip the 5 or 6 weeks out for another one, but we'll target once a month, and we'll have fun. So, Michael, before we get into all of the good stuff we want to talk about today, a few words about who you are, what you're up to, who Hitch Partners is, some of the things you're involved with. You have a lot going on.
Yeah, thanks, Sean. It's good to see you. I was going to say, as far as your timing for getting the cadence of this, it's whenever you and I are not at an airport. Will be the opportune time to get these scheduled.
Exactly.
So I appreciate your schedule. So I'm Michael Piacente. I'm the managing partner and co-founder of Hitch Partners. We are a global executive search firm focused in the all things security, from started in the CISO space and a very particular type of CISO, which we'll get into, and we've expanded. Not only in technology companies, but also smaller to mid-sized enterprises last few years. We also have a layer down service that helps our CISOs build out their teams. After doing 70 or 80 of these, we realized that CISOs were like, thanks for stealing me from where I was, and now I am not able to go out and get my teams built out. So I need help to do that. So we started that group. And then we also last year started helping companies match to virtual CISOs or fractional CISOs as a way to help the market. We noticed that about 70+% of the companies we talked to did not need a CISO. It was pretty obvious that they needed help. But they certainly didn't need that help from an executive search firm that was going to try to sell them on a CISO. In fact, we tried to talk them out of hiring a CISO. So we started doing that. That's been a fun service to help the market. That's us in a nutshell. We run about 25 or 30 CISO searches a year. Then the deputy roles as well. And then, as I mentioned, the matching to the vCISOs, a couple dozen of those so far. So it's been a fun ride. That's where we are.
So you mentioned it before we started recording, and as you said it just now, that the hairs on the back of my neck went up again. So I had the same exact response twice. And I suspect some of the listeners might have the same response. And I think we need to clarify, or I'd like for you to clarify your point of, what was it, 70% of organizations don't need a CISO.
Right.
And so let's talk about that. But first, that doesn't mean they don't need security, of course.
Absolutely not.
or a security leader. It's just that particular role. So maybe, I don't know, maybe a few words on that, the scoping of why that, and then maybe some of the other points that you find is part
of a lot of it goes back to the thesis of our company. You know, we started, I was in IT, I was on the IT side of managed services, the beginnings of data centers, actually going back even longer, started in the storage arena, worked on, VMS systems and all the DEC products. So it was a great way to start right during the .com boom, and started seeing this massive data influx. And then what were we doing with our data? And then we were like, oh, now we're putting the data, either a hybrid situation on premises, or we're building out our own data centers. And then the world changed by this book retailer going and using excess capacity to go sell to small, medium businesses, which now we know as AWS, and the cloud has changed the world, right? So when I moved from IT into executive recruiting, I initially focused on CIO searches and everything below the CIO. And so what we started seeing during that initial 10-year journey was that there was this position called the CISO that kept on coming up. And we started getting calls around 2008, 2009, a couple of different software companies that are well known, saying, we're looking for a CIO, but someone with a security background. And could you help us? And we would say, well, where's the pain point? And they would say the oddest thing to us, which is, we've lost control of our software licensing costs, and we need to bring in someone that can look and rally that in. And I was like, okay, that's not on the top 10 list of reasons why you need a CIO. So what's going on here? And it turns out that time after time, we would watch these software companies, they would essentially lose control of their software development teams, who would go max out their company credit cards on this thing that we now call AWS, because they were tired of waiting for the IT organization to procure compute power and storage. And initially it was chalked up as, well, it's just shadow IT, right? I'm like, no, this is something much larger, right? This is a diversion in the force. Right? So we are going to have a complete focus on application security, AppSec now, and the product level security. This is the product code that's driving the company's story. It's being created in the cloud. It's being managed in the cloud. It's being serviced in the cloud. It is everything. And it's now companies that are more traditional on premise are going and acquiring cloud native companies. So you're starting to see this storm come. And so that's where we decided to focus Hitch Partners, was on a cloud native or cloud first mentality. And so that perspective, just to put that out there, is the reason why we are doing what we are today, in that we see this kind of crazy shift towards what is a CISO in the modern world. Whereas the CISO was focused on internal IT systems and applications and making sure the insider piece was there. And now it's everything from the out, not everything, but there's still a very important piece of that. I don't want to slight any of the billions of revenue and vendors that have made that their lives. But it is a very equally, it's a very equal attack surface now, where your threats from the outside are coming in. And even now we're seeing generative AI tools, as I call it, tools gone wild, and people using that for nefarious reasons. So you have this attack surface that's just broad, it's wide, and so it defines what a CISO is. Now, a CISO in our world is the individual or individuals, depending on the company structure, that is really leading and managing and building that true sponsored program. And most companies that do approach us, so we may only run 30 or so CISO searches a year, but we also speak to a couple hundred companies a year and advise them on what they're looking for. Most of them don't have the desire, the need, the want for actually creating a valid security program, which then defines a CISO. Most of them need a security leader, but it is not the full subset of a CISO. And so we look at the definition of a CISO and say, what you're looking for is not a CISO. In fact, begging them not to hire a CISO because it's not going to turn out well. And instead looking at a head of security or a security leader that just get them started in what they need right now, whether that's compliance, whether that's collaborating with the product security teams or the product development teams, whatever it might be. And so that's when I say 70% of the companies that approach us actually do not need a CISO. It's a very small percentage, 30+%. So that's just to qualify that.
No, I appreciate that. So what are some of the, I don't know if they're responsibilities or activities or attributes that are not needed for that group?
Exactly. It's a massive scope right now. And we really saw the scope increase tenfold really during the pandemic. The CISO, no offense to the CIOs out there, because they're amazing as well, but the CISO in many cases, especially in tech companies, absolutely led the charge to the remote workforce and making sure that it was safe and effective and efficient. And they were the executive that moved up the ranks. And so now you have this really broad scope that a CISO takes on, from security operations and your vulnerability management, your incident response, your SOC operations, to your application security, which has multiple definitions depending on the arrangement of the company, the structure of the company, what they sell, to product security, again, multiple definitions, but the idea being protect the products that are going out the door, to a massive piece in governance and risk and compliance. The regulatory atmosphere has become very murky, and the game has just been upped now with a new SEC ruling that had a little bit of teeth added to that. You have now these, they have the business aspect, or the BISO. So the business folking, how do you make the business aware of the security posture? Is that the CISO doing it, or is that a deputy? There's literally so many components. I'm sure I'm forgetting physical security, fraud, and privacy. All the IT components. How can I forget about that? The corporate security side, all of the millions and sometimes billions of dollars of invested in infrastructure of applications, and a lot of SaaS and other parties. So there's just literally an endless scope to a CISO, and not to mention that they have to codify all these potential risks to the organization and the attack surface and put it into a digestible format for the board to take action on, for the C-suite to take action on, all while trying to educate and create more awareness as to what happens at the blocking and tackling level, malware identification and education around security awareness and phishing. So there's just a massive scope right now. It is by far and away a golden era for the CISO. And that's why what we do, it's so difficult, because everyone's looking for everything different on the menu in different priorities and different orders. They want their appetizer last and their dessert first. And so it makes for a really interesting position right now in the market.
Yeah. And one of the things that, and I suspect we can have a whole conversation on this one point, because I had a chance to chat with Sue Bergamo, what was it, a couple of weeks ago? I think I just published the episode. And one of the things she mentioned was that as the economy is shrinking or holding, organizations are trimming, cybersecurity's not immune to those trimming activities. And of course, organizations want to trim the biggest chunk first, if possible. And she said she didn't mention all of that, but that's kind of my take on it. But she did mention that a lot of CISOs, a lot of CISOs have been let go and not replaced with a new person necessarily, but the workload and the responsibilities handed down, perhaps distributed across a few people in the organization. I don't know if that's something that you're seeing as well. And is that a sign that maybe what you're seeing as they come to you when you say you don't need one, that that they're also realizing it, or is it purely just we need to cut exercise?
Yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, the battlefield promotions have definitely expanded over the last couple of years. It's less about the companies that are coming to us because they're actually looking to build a security posture and often a security program, but may not be a full program. Hence the reason why they don't need a CISO right now. It's just the wrong position to hire. It'd be the equivalent of saying, I need a chief revenue officer and I have yet to have any kind of recurring revenue model yet. Maybe start with a sales leader that can get your first 10 customers in the door, right? So no different than a CISO to be able to scale. But absolutely, I mean, we've seen, so we track, we have about 2,800 CISOs in our US network, about a little under 5,000 worldwide. But meaning 2,800 is, these aren't just LinkedIn profiles or people that we communicate with often and we've interviewed them, we know them. And so we track when they contact us, when they're looking both proactively and they need to make a change in the next year, or, they see the writing on the wall, versus the reactive lookers who are, need something in the next 30 or 60 days. And that number for 5 or 6 years really hovered around 11 to 13%. And over the last year, it's jumped up over 32%. By the way it breaks down is you have about 2% to 3% of reactive lookers and another 9 or 10% of proactive lookers. And so it jumps up to 32%, of which now it's like almost 9% of active lookers, which means almost 10% of the market is on the market, of the base is on the market. And then the remaining 22 or so percent are those that would like to make a change. And so if you think about a third of the market, and those are just the ones that are contacting us, I might want to add, right? This is not data science at its level. It's just pure tracking who's calling us, right? Who's saying, I'm looking for this. So there might be another, larger percentage that's just not contacting us and kind of doing it on their own. Very natural to believe that. But what's happening is to Sue, and Sue's wonderful. I mean, she has a great pulse of the market. What's happening is a lot of these individuals are being replaced. They're in the wrong part of the spreadsheet at the wrong time when the changes are made. The companies are contracting. They're trying to look at and CISO happens to be at that top echelon of the compensation range. They're worth every penny. But the client has to make, or company has to make really tough decisions. And so you're seeing this massive flow of battlefield promotions. And sometimes they are ready. And sometimes the company does provide the right mentorship and gap analysis and identifies that. And sometimes they do the succession planning right. Very small percentage. And by the way, if everyone figures out how to do this, I'll probably be out of a job. So I do want to be cautiously optimistic that they'll figure it all out. But human nature says we're not going to plan too far in advance. We never do. But
yeah, we tend to not do that.
Yeah,
I'm curious the folks that are moving around. I'm not going to share anything that I shouldn't hear, but I get to chat with a number of CISOs on and off the record. And I often hear that I don't have the support of my peers at the executive level as one of the key drivers for frustration and then perhaps change. I don't know if that resonates with you from what you hear. Are there other things? It's a pretty broad statement.
Well,
there could be a lot of things underneath that. What is that really? I don't get the budget. I don't get what are the elements?
Right.
But what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. So this goes into our conversation about Hitchisms. We have certain percentages that we track very closely. The 70% of companies that still don't need a CISO is the real numbers that we have from our own data. 80% would be companies that do not fully understand two things. One, and this is all from our searches and companies we've talked to. One, that they have 80% of the companies have a very difficult time defining and translating what business success looks like with their security program. And the same 80% also have a challenge in fully sponsoring a security program. The sponsorship piece is the reason why CISOs want to leave and usually do end up leaving. as soon as another opportunity comes up. They allow themselves to be recruited out. They're, outside of being, they look at the whole picture, right? Are they being compensated correctly? Yes or no. They can use our compensation report to determine that. A couple of the other compensation reports are excellent as well. But is the program being fully sponsored? And what I mean by that is it's not just about the budget. It's about the reality of going and getting the right resource to defend in the way and be offensive and defense in the way that they need to, and the expectation from the board and the C-suite to go get these things done. Does that translate into the ability to go get the right resources, right? Not just, well, we can't hire because we don't have that number. No, like the best person to do the job is usually at a different layer than what they're willing to pay. The tools that they have inside, we actually are going to use these tools instead. The training, well, you can only do this portion of it, and so it eventually eats it, and then you have the kind of cultural quagmires in the company. Is it a heavy engineering and product facing organization? Is it a heavy sales organization? What's driving the company? Well, if the CISO or security leader doesn't feel that security is even being remotely sponsored, it's not like, hey, look, the CISOs are not prima donnas. They're not expecting everyone to just figure out their world, but they do need to go execute on this crazy expansive scope and they have to be good managers about it, right? And they have to be willing to lose a couple battles, right? And to really focus and to kind of shift their focus. A great place to do this is at the board meeting, which we can do a whole other session on, right? But you have a major issue right now with the level of sponsorship, and that's why we said 80% of the companies are not adequately sponsoring their security programs, either from the beginning or during it. It's the reason why we see most of our searches. Why did that person leave? Well, they weren't really hitting the right targets. Then we go interview that person. We're like, I had no resources. I had no way of getting things done. It's the same story every time. And by the way, CISOs are extremely collaborative. They are, and you know this, Sean, you can talk to 100 of them all the time. It's like they talk amongst themselves. They look out for themselves.
Huge community, absolutely.
Huge community. I've never seen anything like it. It's wonderful and scary all at the same time. It's like a mafia. Like they all talk. There's dozens of Slack channels, and so when the word gets out, and this happened. When that company goes out and tries again, take 2 or take 3 on their CISO search, guess what's going to happen? It's they're immediately going to go back channel the CISO that was there, take what they have to say with a grain of salt, but they're going to listen to them intently. I don't know any other industry that you call the sales VP and be like, hey, how did that go for you, right? It's or the CFO going, what's the challenge here? Why are they looking? Right? That doesn't happen in other industries, as far as I know. And so it's a pretty fascinating microcosm of what goes on in these companies. And are they really going to support me? Because their reputation's on the line. And they don't want to move. They want to settle in, and they want to be in a place that makes, they can make impact. So.
And speaking of that, I don't know if you have any data on this point. And there seemed to be a little wave. I haven't heard much about it in the last, 6 months, I'll say, just to put a number out there. Mm-hmm. The whole concept of ESG, and it was kind of connected to, I'm trying to remember the right phrasing for the movements, where everybody was leaving, like there was a mass exodus of folks leaving, and for especially around when companies said you have to come back into the office, so there were silent quitting, and I can't remember what all the terms were. But the bottom line is, it wasn't just about the job per se. It was about the company that they're working for. People were moving around a lot, maybe 6 months or 9 months ago. And connected to that is this concept of ESG, where you want to work for a company that's doing good things beyond, or as part of its offerings, and perhaps even beyond what it offers. And so I don't know how much of that comes up when you're having conversations with candidates looking for new roles. Is it about the location? Because we talked about having to work in the office or not? Is it about location? Is it about salary? Is it about what the company does? Is it I want to work for a retailer, or I want to be in banking and support that, or I'm looking to do nonprofit stuff? I don't know. I'm throwing a bunch of stuff out there. Do you have any sense of why, or what, not necessarily what, but where or why, but what people are looking for when they move?
Yeah, it's a great, I see where you're going with it. It's, I would say the majority of the conversations that we are having, there's a theme in that CISOs and security leaders in general want to do what they do best in a place that provides impact to the world, to the earth, to humanity. The days of going in and securing a widget are kind of past us. And yes, even in a tough economy where there's massive competition, and I went through the numbers earlier, you can almost assure that there's sometimes 400, 500, 600 applicants for these roles. I mean, we're doing retained search only, and we still see we don't advertise, but we still end up with 150, 200 candidates or more that just come in from all these places that just hear about the search. And so we just know that there's just a ton of competition, but there's they want to do something good, so that they all honed in on their skill set. They know how to defend. They know how to be offensive. They know how to codify that risk. They're honing in on their skill sets, but they want to do this for a greater purpose. And that's definitely a theme that we see. Another theme is I think the whole remote versus hybrid versus on-site definitely, thankfully, has calmed down a little bit. It was a little vigorous there for a while, and you could kind of see lines and even political lines coming in, which was highly annoying. By the way, it was just, I look at it as, what's the quality of life for this individual, and what's the biggest impact for the company? It's been proven that CISOs in particular can run their teams, and they can run their own management from a purely remote situation. Now, does that make sense to do that in every case? Absolutely not, right? There might be, a lot of technology companies that we work with actually need the CISO as actually the most mature executive, a technology executive on the staff, on the team. And so you probably need that person on site to help them. But we always try to look at what are the possibilities for going in and being flexible on this point to clients. We kind of show them, if you want someone sitting in Salt Lake City or in St. Louis or in Boston or in London or Madrid, this is what you're, and you're going to have to airlift someone in, you're going to have to helicopter them in, or going to get them a corporate apartment. Or they're already there in those cities, or they're willing to move there during this time, during this, economic crisis, or, during the pandemic. This is what your pipeline looks like. Here's the reality. Here's how big it is. And oh, by the way, if you want diversity candidates, this is it gets that much smaller, versus let's find the best person in the world. And let's hone in on that. And it was a great podcast on Masters of Scale. Reid Hoffman, they was talking about, I can't remember if it was the Airbnb one or not, but it was pretty fascinating. It was like, they made a challenge that gave 2 world-class soccer coaches and said, the rule is you can build a team, and the first coach gets to build a team just using the talent in Sao Paulo, I think it was. And the other coach had the whole world to work with, and they had to recruit, the number of players that they had for a full team, and to look at the stats later and see what they were able to do. And it just showed that no matter what you're building, if you're just doing it localized, you may not have the best talent, even though they're incredibly talented, it may not be the best. So is that the philosophy you want? So I see that this is still an argument. It's still a major thing for our clients. Usually our clients start in one place and end in another, right? It's either, well, we want it more remote, or we're okay with it being more remote, or we want it more on site. And our job is to let them know what the market is really going to bear. That's our role. Our role is not to shift them either one. It's really to show them the data that allows them to get the best opportunity.
So you're kind of sitting in the middle there, and I'd say hardly any of this is binary, right? Even just your example of the remote workforce. It's a gray area. depending on where it is, the type of company, the size of the program, maturity. And then on the other end of it, well, you have the team in there then, and then you need a leader to manage that team. And the leader, you want to have certain experiences, certain skill sets, attributes, and those kind of things. And I view it as kind of like matchmaking, where you might have the best company, quote unquote, and the best CISO, and they may not match because they're in different places, right? They have a different mentality, different culture, they think differently, different stages of life, right? A 40-year-old and a 60-year-old, a 40-year-old and an 80-year-old is going to look different, those relationships. And so I guess my point is understanding, because you just mentioned they start here and they end up somewhere else. That's an understanding and a conversation with the client, the company, to really say, what are you looking for? Where are you starting with your program, or what are you trying to accomplish, or where are you? What are you trying to accomplish, and how does the pool of candidates line up now and help you get there? And have they experienced that before, or are you looking for somebody who hasn't experienced and wants to think outside the box and be completely generative and creative in their thinking? Yeah. So I don't know. Talk to me about the conversations on both sides, gaining that understanding and bringing the matchmaking together.
Yeah, I love this question, by the way. And I'm going to give major credit to my business partner, Brett Starr, who always says this famously. Our role as search professionals is what, if I had to put a percentage on it, probably high 70s, that people don't understand what our role actually, what it is, or they perceive our role to be something. Our role is go get this done faster with a bigger network and, a couple other things. It's not necessarily about that. Our job is to really, a positive experience for our clients should be, we have shown you the full nature or the full scope of what is available in the market that your story and narrative was able to attract. That's a hard message to sometimes tell a client, especially if they think that their message actually is resonating to a totally different subcategory of CISOs, as an example. And so my business partner always says that our primary role is to let the client know and inform the client using all of our data and all of our back channeling and all of our work evidence, is to let the client know exactly who this candidate or candidates are, right? That's our job. Our job is to look at every angle, cover every base, and let them know. On the flip side of that, it's the same for the candidate. Our job is to let the candidate know exactly who the client is. The way we do that is we have this thing called interviewing the interviewers, which is kind of a fun way of introducing ourselves to the client. We interview every executive in the company that they'll let us interview, usually 20-minute discussions. And we interview them on a couple different things. What's their role? Why did they join the company? What's been their experience so far? And then we get a little bit more granular into, let us hear the company pitch. By the way, can we hear the company pitch, and can you tie it back to a security program and why it's so important, right? And can you tell me what, that's why I said 80% earlier aren't able to define what success looks like in just 18 months. We asked that question. Can you tell me what success in this program, if we were to hire this person today, 18 months from now, if I asked you, what does success look like? Most of them don't know how to detail that. It's not a very fair question, right? Because it's not like they've thought about this, but it just kind of gives you that mentality of, we need to let our candidates know exactly how the company is thinking about success with this program. Again, a program that needs to be fully sponsored, back to my original statement. So there's this, our job is, you're absolutely right, we're kind of in the middle, but our job is to make sure that both parties, this relationship, this matchmaking, is coming from a place that we inform them. It's not our opinions, it's data-based, it's based on what we observed and how we actually codify the risk. If you talk to any one of our candidates, probably the first thing they'll say is, Hitch never tried to sell me on a role. In fact, they may have actually acted like they were trying to talk me out of a role, which is not really what we're trying to do. We just want them to go in eyes wide open. CISOs are extremely transparent with us. We're honored by that, humbled by it, but we want to do the same. We owe them that. And the same thing with our clients. We are the agent of our clients. They are the ones that pay us. However, we do need to tell them if their story is not resonating, or if this interviewer is not effective, or if this interview process, another Hitchism, 70% of companies don't typically know how to structure a CISO interview panel, which is scary, right? That we usually have to come in and do some fixing, or they figure it out on their own, but it's painful. So anyway, a little bit of rambling, but that's what we see, and the sort of give and take here.
Yeah, and I'm going to jump on that last point, because it's easy as a candidate to, trying to think of what perspective here. I'm just thinking it's easy to look at the candidate has to put their best foot forward, share anything and everything, tell the best story possible, have the right connections in the right place at the right time to have an opportunity to connect with a company that may or may not be right.
That's right.
And then you get into the interview process, and it becomes a two-part. I'm selling myself, plus I also need to figure out, is this the right place for me? And I don't know how much of the responsibility there is, or how well organizations are telling that story. So it's not just the company story, but what is their current program? What are the weaknesses? How transparent are they that, boy, we really screwed this up. We overspent, we underspent, we hired a team, we outsourced something that we shouldn't have, we locked it, I don't know, whatever, pick your favorite horror story. How does a candidate learn that before investing in days and days of interviews?
They don't.
To find that out eventually at some point, or to be told by the company that, well, these are the real problems we're trying to solve, and by the way, you've not solved those before, so you're not the right candidate.
Right.
It seems very one-sided to me from outside looking in.
Yeah. Compound that with 80% of the interviewers, as I mentioned, or 70% of the interviewers don't know how to prepare for a specific interview with a CISO, right? And by the way, that's not their fault. They've never probably interviewed a CISO. They don't know what this beast in the wild is and what this crazy scope is looking like. And they think of compliance. They think of a CISO from 2011 or 12 saying, this is the person that came in and just told us, no, you can't release this out there until it has to hit that. And that is not a modern CISO. I don't know any CISOs like that right now. I really don't. I'm sure there are, but I haven't run into them. And they're certainly at mass, right? These are extremely collaborative, functional managers that look at how to partner. Some do it better than others. Some have unique ways, but most interviewers have no idea how to interview a CISO, and it shows. It shows. When we do our interviewing, the interviewers, we pick up on that. We're like, here's a couple that we need to work on, right? We've had plenty of these scenarios. And by the way, the telltale sign is when companies come to us, and I'm sure this happens for my other search colleagues, and we say, well, what have you done? Well, we've interviewed, some people, and we just haven't found quite the match between technical, strategic, and governance. Haven't quite found that match. And okay, well, how many people have you interviewed? And we've had companies that have come with us, they've interviewed dozens, 60 people, right? And that's not unusual. It just takes a long. This is hard. This is really hard. So the other thing is that the interview processes are too long. They're not selling the candidate on what the value of setting up a program or rebuilding a program or transforming a program, whatever you want to call it, is in their company. They can't tie back the importance of their product, their mission to security. Very few of them can. Actually, I will say that they are getting better. There's some light at the end of the tunnel there, but they're getting better. But it's still a huge percentage that cannot. The other piece is that over 60% of companies do not provide valid feedback to candidates as to why they were not selected, right? Often leading to a fairly negative experience, which, by the way, then goes into the Slack channels and say, this is what happens. And then the biggest kicker of all is that 80% of companies that we've worked with fail to recognize the components of negotiating a CISO's compensation and also their personal protection terms. Lots happen in again, probably a whole other topic for another podcast, another day, but another session. But there's a lot that the CISO is going to need for personal protection, not just the numbers, but like what they're going to need in light of D&O policy and everything else. So most companies aren't prepared to have that conversation. We actually built a whole microsite and send it to our clients in advance saying, just so you know, when we get to the end of this journey, like you're going to need to know these things. So let's talk about it now as opposed to it being a surprise later. And they're like, oh, wow, thanks. This is great. But yeah, this is a major issue. I probably 3-4 times a day, I'll be the shoulder of a CISO to cry on saying, I just spent 4 to 6 hours on this process. I still don't know what they're looking for. I've got this person saying they need this person saying they need that. These aren't our searches, that they're talking about, but it's just so disheartening to hear. And by the way, they're running a full-time security program somewhere else. So it's not like they have infinite amount of, disposable time that they can go do this. They're like doing this between their board meetings and whatnot. So it's a huge issue. I would say that the quality of interviewing CISOs across the board is abysmal. It's not even close to being good. And we try to make it better, right? We're certainly not perfect. But we try to expose everything that we can think that's going on in that environment. But it's a scary thing. And by the way, it's not any better for the layer downs, right? The ICs, like, what is the big picture here? What are we trying to do? They have the same issue, right? They're just like, come in, fill in slot A with person B, and don't ask a lot of questions, and we'll let you know if you have the job. And it is, to your point, extremely one way.
So I have another question, but I don't want to leave this one without asking this. One thing a company can do now to fix that, and one thing a candidate can do to make that experience better. I have some thoughts of my own, but I would like to hear you.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that I've seen that's extremely effective for companies that don't yet need a CISO is to hire a vCISO, right? They're great educators. They're great framework builders. It's not a massive investment. It's a point in time. Even if you are hiring a CISO full-time, go bring on a CISO advisor. There's a lot of people that have been, done this highly effectively. Like Caleb Seema's doing it right now for a couple companies, and great guy. Phil Venables did this for many years and was incredibly effective. Right? There's people out there that have just a wealth of knowledge. It doesn't have to be someone at that caliber either, but it could be someone that just understands. Bring them in and say, this. We understand this is not the role for you, but help us navigate through this, because they'll look at it from the point of view of a CISO and say, well, this process, they'll see the same things I see. Like this interview process, this is going to be trouble, right? It doesn't match what you're actually asking or what you're prioritizing. On the candidate side, it's research, and use your network. First thing I always tell CISOs when they're out there interviewing, obviously you can call me anytime. I will walk you through what I know and what I don't know, Chatham House rules and all that. But look, the CISO network is incredible. They have vendors and consultants and colleagues, and they do a pretty good job of going out and asking, what should I expect here with this interview process? What are the questions I should be asking? If you were going into what are the three biggest things? Sometimes CISOs will just call the former CISO and be like, "What's up?" Right? And then that's a pretty effective solution as well. But I think that's what they both can be doing, is just to get further educated. I also, one little trick is ask some of the questions we ask. What would be success? What does success look like in the security program? To each one of your interviewers, ask it a different way and see what the response is. They'll get the same. They're hearing the same things that we're hearing. So those are just a couple of examples. I also suggest for candidates, which is probably a little bit of a contrarian view for most HR teams, but ask about compensation and protection early. Don't wait till the end, right? You've got 9 to 15 hours invested in time only to find out that they're 40% or 25% off of the mark of the market, let alone my own personal compensation. And they weren't even willing to do a D&O policy or look at a double trigger if it's a private company. You don't want to find those things out after you've invested. I think most candidates in general are not, they're afraid that they will mess up their chances if they start asking those questions. And I definitely implore them to be more aggressive on that. And many of them are listening and starting to do that. So.
I love it. I don't know. I know we're on time in terms of hour mark here. You have another minute?
Sure.
Because I have one more question I think we can kind of wrap up with, because I've been working on a blog series. It started as 3 parts. I've added a 4th. This will probably contribute to the 4th, and who knows where it'll go beyond there. The core title is, "Am I wrong for not wanting to be a CISO?"
I love it.
And I dig into some of the reasons why I think that, and so kind of shifting now from CISOs who have already accepted that challenge and answered that question for themselves. Maybe some are looking to get out as well. But so setting that group aside that have already made that decision and are doing it, there's a group of folks who have not yet been a CISO and want to be. And so any thoughts to that group? So they're a security leader or an IT leader or wherever they're coming from. How can they best prepare themselves for this type of engagement?
Yeah, first, yes, there's a lot of CISOs that are not a lot, but there's a handful. I think it's kind of blown out of proportion a little bit, but there's definitely a handful that are kind of at their wits' end, and maybe this isn't the right role, and they've experienced burnout. A lot of it comes down to that sponsorship piece I mentioned earlier, of a lack of sponsorship. To answer your question, I think being a CISO, I'm obviously extremely biased. So let me just put that out there. This is my business. This is my baby. But I truly do believe that a CISO is the most unique technology executive in today's world. They have the most unique view of people, process, and technology in a company. And the ones that are highly effective immediately become the board and the C-suite's strategic advisor on looking around I call it the chief look around the corner officer, right? That's what I call it. I don't know the acronym. It's too many letters in there, or too many words in there. But the idea is that that they are able to see things before others, and they're able to look at business challenges and say, here's the risk to that. The ones that can really kind of get that into a digestible format are highly effective to all audiences. That's key. But I would say that if you're looking for a career if you're someone that absolutely wants a challenge, want to run around your hair on fire, always looking at the biggest problems to solve in the business, not just in security, and you feel that you found a good match culturally, it is the greatest job on earth, right? And how do you prepare for that? A lot of yoga, a good diet, an ability to have yourself pretty well balanced, because it is a potential burnout situation. Many of my friends have been in those situations, and there's some horrible stories, but it is a wonderful environment. I do think it's going to lead, and it's already leading to some incredible stories of not just entrepreneurs and CEOs, but also COOs, CTOs, CEOs. Not that it's the next wave of new CEOs. I'm not saying that, but there is a great path forward from a CISO that I don't think people give enough credit to, and it's just it's a great way to get into that business, and I do think it's going to continue to expand. I think we're going to see the CISO role continue on. It'll get more critiqued about it. It'll go through its waves. I mean, one of the reasons, by the way, that we're seeing so many CISOs on the chopping block this last year and a half, 2 years, is because they've actually elevated to the level of being in that conversation in the first place, right? Like, you don't get noticed as a massive cost in the organization without having achieved something, right? Like when we first started this business, they were comparing CISOs to a director of IT. A director of IT is a great position, but it's nowhere near what a CISO's scope is in many of these companies. And so
congratulations on your success.
Yeah. So success is what happens, right? Everyone wants you, and then you're probably the first to go if there's a major downfall. So, but no, great question.
I love it. And you mentioned 3 things. I'm going to add a 4th, and I think it's a good way to wrap up with my final thought anyway. So you said yoga. I think exercise is important.
Yes.
I think this is true across the board. A good diet, I'm actually part of a group where we talk about exercise and diet in relation to
very cool
this role, which is really cool. And work-life balance, you mentioned burnout there as well. I'm going to add a good support group, which we touched on earlier, just the broad community.
Yep.
And maybe this is where I can ask you for your final word on the point of community, where one is not yet a CISO, but wants to start building or participating and engaging with the community of CISOs. Any ideas or thoughts of?
Yeah, there's someone. Yeah, you absolutely have to have your peeps, right? They will get you through, just like anything else in life, right? If you're going through a turbulent time, a loss, I mean, look at the pandemic. We all found humanity again for a time. People go through divorces or substance abuse or depression, the variety of things that happen in our lives, right? You need people around you, other humans that you can connect with, and time to yourself, time to think. But yeah, I as far as those that want to get into the space, I mean, I know that there are programs like ISLF, great program, that you can join, and they have multiple layers from contributor layer to CISO layer. Affinia is another great one that we work with. I'm part of Security Tinkerers, is a pretty amazing. We call it the tribe. There's probably a dozen out there. CISO Consortium. There's a lot that have not just CISOs, but are willing to take on or have organized mentorship programs. So definitely implore you to do that. And if you don't know one, call me and we'll match you with one, right? We'll make sure that if you're on that path and you're serious about it, or if you're just testing it out, let's talk, and I'll make sure you get to the right place so that you can get the motivation and reality that you need to make the decision. So.
Yeah, and I know Laz has put together a good community.
Laz is awesome.
Personally, and with the Blue Lava community.
Yep, great example. I didn't mean to forget about Laz. But,
oh, no, of course not. And so I'm going to use this opportunity now to ask the listeners and viewers, if you have ideas or groups that you're part of or think are good, feel free to share them with me. I'll update the show notes with those links. We'll include the ones we mentioned today to start. But if you have others, let me know, and we'll include them here. Well, Michael, this has been super fun. Hopefully the listeners and viewers enjoyed it as well. A great chat, man.
You as well. Thanks, Sean. I look forward to the next time.
Yep, absolutely. And thanks everybody. We'll see you in a month or so-ish, something like that. I think we already have the next one booked. I don't know.
I believe so. I don't think we have any flights booked at that particular
time. No flights blocking our chat. And already a gazillion ideas lined up. I certainly tripled the idea list having the chat today.
You too.
So no lack of options to talk about. Of course, like I mentioned earlier, if somebody has an idea or a topic you want us to dig into, let us know. All right. Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Michael. Catch you on the next one.
Thanks, Sean. Take care.
Pantera, the leader in automation security validation, allows organizations to continuously test the integrity of all cybersecurity layers by emulating real-world attacks at scale to pinpoint the exploitable vulnerabilities and prioritize remediation towards business impact. Learn more at pantera.io.
Imperva is the cybersecurity leader whose mission is to protect data and all paths to it with a suite of integrated application and data security solutions. Learn more at imperva.com.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of Redefining Security podcast. If you learned something new and this podcast made you think, then share itspmagazine.com with your friends, family, and colleagues. If you represent a company and wish to associate your brand with our conversations, sponsor one or more of our podcast channels. We hope you will come back for more stories and follow us on our journey. You can always find us at the intersection of technology, cybersecurity, and society.